friends, today we are going to learn how to file GST return by what categories of taxable person in GST regime. In GST regime, if you are registered as a normal taxable person, regular taxable person, then there are three returns to be filed monthly basis. Outward supply return for supply of goods or services to be filed by next 10th of next month. When I say 10th of next month, for the month of July, it is due by 10th of August. Then comes inward supply return by 15th of next month, which is GSTR 2. And the last and consolidated return, which will consolidate your outward supply, output tax liability, and then inward supply, input tax credit, net payment to be made by a consolidated return by 20th of next month, meaning thereby for July, if you are filing your GST return, then consolidated return to be filed by 20th August. Then the GSTR 4 applicable only for composition dealer who has opted for composition dealer, and this is to be filed on quarterly basis. 18th of the next quarter, meaning thereby for July to September quarter, it is to be filed by 18th of October. And who can opt for composition dealer registration in GST? Trader, manufacturer and restaurant. An important condition, you should keep it to your mind. You can opt for composition dealer registration only when aggregate turnover is not more than 75 lakh rupees and you are not engaged in interstate outward supply, or you are not supplying goods through e-commerce operator. So these are the exceptions. They cannot go for composition dealer registration. Then it comes return to be filed by non-resident taxable person by 20th of next month or within 7 days from the end of registration certificate, whichever is earlier, GSTR 5. Who are non-resident taxable person? If you are coming from outside India, let's say Germany, and taking registration in India for participating in trade exhibition, then you have to take non-resident taxable person registration, and for that this return would be must, which is to be filed by 20th of next month or within 7 days from the validity of registration certificate, end of the registration certificate, whichever is earlier. Then comes GSTR 6, which is going to be applicable for input service distributor. Normal due date 13th of next month. GSTR 7 applicable for TDS deductor, and this TDS deductor provision yet to be effected, yet to be implemented. It is paused for the time being. Otherwise, TDS deductor return GSTR 7 need to be filed by 10th of next month, meaning thereby for July you have to file by 10th of August. Coming to GSTR 8. Before I move to GSTR 8, TDS deductor. Who could be TDS deductor? There is specified provision under section 51 of CGST Act, and for specified transaction, if value of contract exceeding 2.5 lakh rupees, then TDS need to be deducted while remitting payment by contractee to the contractor, but such transaction is yet to be notified. Now moving to GSTR 8, which is applicable for e-commerce operator under section 52 of CGST Act 2017. E-commerce operator has to collect tax collection at source while remitting payment to the supplier of goods or services. They are supplying their goods or services through e-commerce operator. Even for TCS, provision are yet to be notified, yet to be effected. So we have to wait. Then comes annual return. An annual return to be filed by all regular taxable person except casual taxable person, non-resident taxable person, ISD, TDS deductor and TCS e-commerce operator. This is annual return GSTR 9 to be filed by 31st December of next financial year, meaning thereby if you are filing your annual return for financial year 2017-18, then due date for filing annual return would be 31st December 2018. Thereafter, you got annual return 9A and 9A to be filed by composition dealer 31st December of next financial year. 9B is another annual return to be filed by e-commerce operator. Again due date would be 31st December of next financial year, and there would be concept of annual audit by form number 9C, which is called annual audit report, to be filed by such taxpayer whose aggregate turnover is more than 2 crore and practicing chartered accountant or cost accountant are empowered to conduct audit for such assessee, and they will provide the report, audit report, which would be submitted along with GSTR 9C, and due date would be 31st December of next financial year. Having said that, now we have to understand who all are supposed to file initial 3 return: GSTR 1, GSTR 2 and GSTR 3. GSTR 1 outward supply, GSTR 2 inward supply, GSTR 3 consolidated return. Now these returns are applicable for all regular taxable person except composition dealer, non-resident taxable person, ISD input service distributor, TDS deductor, tax collection at source by e-commerce operator. Otherwise, all regular taxable person including casual dealer has to file 3 return on monthly basis. As you know, GST introduced from July 1, 2017, GSTR 1, which is supposed to be filed for July month by 10th of August, is being extended to 5th of September. Similarly, GSTR 2 inward supply, which is due to be filed on 15th of August, extended to 10th of September. GSTR 3 due by 20th of August for the month of July, now extended up to 15th of September 2017. Now we have to understand, for this July month we have to file our GST return 1, 2, 3, and this is applicable for regular taxable person including casual dealer. Now what is the GSTR 1, 2 and 3 and relevance of these returns, implication of these return for supplier and recipient, supplier of goods or services, recipient of goods or services. I want to explain one parameter. This parameter is the beauty of automation in GST regime. What happened in GST regime? If I am a supplier of goods or services, first of all I have to see, am I supposed to take registration, and registration required if my aggregate turnover crosses 20 lakh rupees, 10 lakh rupees for Northeast state, including hilly state. In case of compulsory registration under section 24 of CGST Act 2017, which includes reverse charge method, interstate supply, principal and agent, any supplier supplying goods through e-commerce operator, TDS deductor, tax collection at source, etc. compulsory registration irrespective of any threshold amount. So if I have taken registration as a regular taxable person in GST regime, then I would be raising invoice. That is called tax invoice under section 31 of CGST Act 2017. Now this regular taxable person will have two kind of invoices, B2B, business to business. I am registered, I am raising my invoice to a recipient who is also registered. That is called business to business. And another could be business to consumer. I am registered but raising my invoice to a consumer who is not registered in GST regime. So both the invoices would be tax invoices. And now there could be intrastate supply or interstate supply. What is intrastate? When location of supplier and place of supply within same state. Intrastate, what is applicable? CGST and SGST. In case of union territory with no legislature, CGST and UTGST applicable in such union territories with no legislature. In case of interstate supply of goods or services, IGST applicable. And what is the silver lining to determine interstate? When location of supplier and place of supply is in different state, IGST applicable. So what happened in GST regime? If I am a supplier of goods, then I may have intrastate supply or interstate supply, or I may have export and import. Export and import of goods or services are also being treated as interstate supply. Now for export, there is clarity that export are zero rated or supplies made to SEZ unit or developer are zero rated. No taxes required to be charged on export of goods or services or supplies made to SEZ unit or developer. In that case, you may have accumulation of credit which you have paid GST on your procurement of input and input services used for the provision of export. Such accumulation of credit you can go for refund in GST regime. Export, import of goods again is interstate supply. On import of goods you will pay basic custom duty, custom cess, IGST and compensation cess if applicable. Compensation cess applicable only for specified goods or services. For import of services, as against service tax which we used to pay under reverse charge in pre-GST regime, now we will pay IGST. So mainly a regular taxable person can have three broad transactions: intrastate, interstate, export or import. When we talk about all three combination, your GSTR1 become important. What is GSTR1? Outward supply return. Outward supply of the supplier. So supplier has to upload invoice particulars. Invoice particulars of its B2B supply and B2C supply. And this GSTR1 need to be finalized on or before 10th of next month. But as we all know, for July, when GST introduced from July 1, 2017, due date is extended. So GSTR1 need to be filed by 5th of September. Now this GSTR1, 2 and 3, I want to explain the reference, implication and importance of these three returns. In GST regime, if I'm a supplier and I'm supplying goods, then I have B2B invoices and B2C invoices. I will upload the particulars, invoice particular on GSTN portal. Once I upload the particulars and my return outward supply gets finalized by 10th of next month, then what happened? Whatever I've supplied gets auto-populated in GSTR2A. You can see that in the slide which is before you, that recipient who has purchased the goods or services from me, they can see in their 2A, they can see that these all purchases he has made from supplier. Now he can avail credit on the basis of invoice particulars uploaded by the supplier of goods or services. So GSTR2A, which is getting auto-populated for recipient of goods or services, he will finalize his inward supply return by 15th of next month. While finalizing GSTR2A to GSTR2, he has option of add, modify, delete, on hold. These options would be available to the recipient of goods. What are these options? Let me explain one example pertaining to add, modify, delete and hold. What is add? Let's say supplier has supplied the goods on 28th of September, raised the tax invoice, supplied the goods. Being recipient, you have received the goods and you have received the tax invoice, but supplier forgot to upload the invoice particulars on GSTN portal while finalizing GSTR1 by 10th of next month. What happened? Being recipient, you will not find that particular entry in GSTR2A. Question comes, can you really take credit? You have invoice, you have received the goods, but invoice particulars is not uploaded by the supplier. Yes, you can add. You can add this transaction in your GSTR2A while finalizing GSTR2. I will tell you once you add what will happen thereafter. You can add, modify. If supplier had charged 100 rupees taxable value and IGST 18 rupees, but by mistake he has uploaded particulars at 16 rupees as against 18 rupees. You could see that IGST credit is flowing from supplier in 2A 16 rupees as against 18 rupees charge mentioned on tax invoice. Can you modify? Being recipient, yes, you can modify. You can put 18 rupees as against 16 rupees. That is called modification. Third is delete. I have supplied certain goods or services. I have uploaded the particulars, invoice particulars, while finalizing my GSTR1, which would be auto-populated for recipient in 2A. But question comes, there are certain negative list of goods or services in GST regime under section 17 subsection 5 of CGST Act 2017. Even though you can see such transaction in your 2A while finalizing GSTR2, but you can't take credit because these are called negative list of input or input services. Like 17.5 talks about food and beverages, outdoor catering, club membership, construction of immovable property, etc. You may see such transaction even though supplier uploading invoice particulars, which you could see in 2A, but you can't avail credit because these are negative list of input and input services. And the last option called on hold. What is on hold? What is called on hold? In GST regime, recipient can take credit only when 4 conditions are satisfied. You have tax invoice or requisite document to avail credit, or you have received the goods or services. Supplier must have paid the taxes either by cash or utilizing credit account, and recipient must have filed the return to avail the credit. Now one case could be, I have raised the invoice on 28th September while supplying goods from Bangalore to Delhi, which you have received only on 2nd October. Then what happened? Being supplier, I have uploaded all the invoice particulars on my September return, which would be auto-populated for you in GSTR 2A, which you can see also. But can you take credit in the month of September when you have not received the goods? You can't take credit. You have to take credit only in the month of October only. So what happened? You can see this transaction in your GSTR 2A, which you will keep on hold for the succeeding month when actually you have received the goods. So that is the concept on hold. So add, modify, delete, on hold. So while finalizing GSTR 2, being recipient of goods or services, you will do all these add, modify, delete, on hold for finalizing your inward supply return by 15th of next month. Once you finalized it, then it gets auto-populated in GSTR 1A for your supplier. Your supplier can see what all add and modification is being done by recipient of goods or services pertaining to his supply. So what happened? If you have made any add or modification pertaining to my supply, I can see in my GSTR 1A, then option would be available to such supplier to agree with your add or modification. If I really accept whatever add and modification done by you while finalizing GSTR 2, then what happened? ITC match with supplier and recipient. In case supplier does not agree or does not accept, in that case, whatever credit being taken by you after add and modification, that would be called provisional credit, of which you can take credit but with a time period defined in GST provision. If say it's provisional credit pertaining to the month of January, it should be concluded by the March month. If it is not concluded, means not accepted by the supplier, it should be match. If it is not accepted by supplier to your add and modification which you did while finalizing GSTR 2 for the month of January, then what happened? Whatever credit taken by you would be provisional credit, and that would be added with your output tax liability, and you have to pay along with interest. These are all automized process, would be run through GST and network. So by 17th of next month, 1A, which is auto-populated for supplier, supplier has to confirm. And then by 20th of next month, GSTR 3, and that is consolidated. Outward supply, output tax liability. Inward supply, input tax credit. And consolidated net tax liability to be paid either by e-cash ledger or by e-credit ledger of respective head, IGST, CGST, SGST or UTGST or compensation cess. Now this return mechanism, which we have explained to all of you, just to give a flavor of how the return mechanism will work in GST, which we all are talking about, automation. Manual intervention would be minimized and it is all automized through GST and portal. Now how to file GSTR 1 with online and offline mode, we are going to explain with next GST capsule, wherein you can see how to file your GSTR 1 with online mode or offline mode. Hope you must have experienced by this time now, the return importance in GST regime and how this return going to be automized for supplier and recipient, which will calculate output tax liability for the supplier and input tax credit for the recipient, and the transaction are going to be auto matched, which is called ITC matching. So watch how to file GSTR1 in next GST education capsule. Thanks for watching. Thank you very much.